Welcome to Secret Story, final part coming. It was almost 10:30. I thought James' plane should have been landing about now. My heart started to flutter as I anticipated the next hour or so before we hit the road for the beach that I thought about this last week and how badly I had been cheating on James. A sudden feeling of sadness and guilt overwhelmed me. How did I do that? What had gotten into me? I suddenly felt sick, ran to the bathroom, and vomited. I sat on the floor holding the toilet, emptying my guts. I knew I had done damage to us that may be unrepairable. I knew I could not hide it from James and would have to tell him. Shivers began to run through me, as I recalled 7 years ago. We had that serious, come to Jesus talk when we both came clean on our transgressions during the first years of our marriage. Yes, I had cheated several times in those years, and James also had his affairs. We were at a time in our relationship when we had to decide if our love for each other was strong enough to keep us together or if we needed to split and move on. We had kids and our families to consider, and we definitely loved each other and our kids. It was a tough time for us. We were in limbo for many weeks, with neither of us wanting to leave, but at the same time, neither knew how to survive. It was on a wintry morning in November. The kids were in school, and James and I had been talking about our situation. I could see that James had finally realized the direction I was leaning. I knew soon my decision would become clear to James, and I was petrified, wondering how he would react to what was about to happen. I knew I loved him more than life, but I also knew that neither of us could remain faithful the rest of our lives together, and neither could tolerate cheating after all our discussions. With that in mind, I decided to make a move. There came a knock at the door. "Are you expecting someone?" James asked me. That I looked down, then stood and walked out without an answer. I stopped in the hallway and listened, tears running down my cheeks. I did not want a divorce. I wanted us to stay together. But we were stuck, unable to decide, so I had to make a move to shake us up. I looked at Lacy, and when she didn't respond, I got a sinking feeling in my stomach and felt ill. I watched Lacy leave the room, and I walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was a young woman in a business suit. She was holding a yellow envelope and her cell phone. She looked at me with a flat look on her face. I was frozen and said nothing. Then, like a clap of thunder, the words came out of her mouth, "Are you James Allen Sims?" I stammered, Yes I am." She thrust the envelope at me. "Sir, you have been served." James must have been in shock. He took the envelope without a word. I moved out, looking at him as the woman took 2 pictures of him on her phone, turned, and walked away. James stood in the open doorway for several minutes, then finally stepped back and closed the door. James looked at the envelope. He knew what was inside. James walked back to his chair. He must have heard me as he sat down and looked in my direction. I was standing in the hall crying, and I said nothing. James laid the envelope on the table and stood up. He looked at me, turned, silently walked out of the house, and drove off. I had no idea where he was going or what he would do. My heart ached at what I had done, but I hoped it would open a serious dialogue, so we could finally resolve things and decide what we would do. I did not want a divorce, and I knew James didn't want one either. Back to now, not wanting a repeat of that time. I finally felt okay and stopped crying. I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and gargled with mouthwash. I looked at myself, took a deep breath, and knew what to do. Before this weekend was over, I would confess to all my transgressions this week and pray to God that James could forgive me. That I crawled back into bed, feeling disgusted with myself, not feeling any longer. That I pulled the black sheet up, covering almost all of me, and lay waiting for James. My plane arrived, and I picked up my luggage, took the shuttle to my SUV, and headed home. I was excited to get home to Lacy and back in our bed with her. Then we would spend a few days at the beach reconnecting, one of my favorite things to do. She is always so passionate and loving and never fails to please me. As I drove, I remembered my flight, my week away, and what I had run through my mind. Lacy seemed a little different this week, which concerned me. Lacy had been more distant sounding on the phone when we talked, and she was not as available to me as she normally is. We had missed connecting several times, and text responses were unduly slower than usual. That was not normal. I had a strange feeling, wondering what Lacy had been up to. Until this week, I had no doubts about her since our agreement 7 years ago. Second, my suspicions were fueled by my actions this week. At this conference, I worked with the local sales representative Teresa Sanchez. Teresa and I have a history, so if Lacy had known I was working with her, she would have been very unhappy, so I did not tell her. Teresa was one of my several transgressions 7 or 8 years ago. We had been together several times before, but after Lacy and I had our mid-marriage crisis and came clean with each other, I stopped any involvement with her or any of the others. It helped that she had gotten married and wanted to be faithful to her husband. It had been hard for me to give her up. This week was the first time we had been away from both our homes together. We were staying at the resort and in rooms next to each other. Unfortunately, the rooms were adjoining with a connecting door to make things even easier. Teresa and her husband were not doing well. She wanted to start a family, and her husband could not get her pregnant. What I had done could become a major problem, and she was sad and came to me for comfort. I thought back to what Teresa and I had done this week. The worst of all was I had no meeting that ran long. The conference was over at lunch. Teresa whispered, "James, I think you have put our baby into me this week. I pray you have. I want this baby and will never tell or talk to you about it. It will be Jose's baby, and we will raise him as if he is ours. You will have no obligation toward us. I love you for doing this for me. I am sorry I did not tell you my plan. I did not know what to say, so I said nothing. I went to my room, showered, and left for the airport without saying another word to Teresa." As the cab sped along, a text came from Teresa. Teresa's text: "James, I am sorry for not telling you, but I love you for being with me this week. Our time together was incredible, and I will miss you for the rest of my life. James, know that you have done a wonderful thing this week, giving us a baby that Jose will love as his own. Thank you, thank you." Teresa. I felt sick about what I had done. There was a good chance I fathered a baby with Teresa. Jesus, what do I do if I had? How could I ever tell Lacy I had done that? It would be the end of us. I don't know if that happened, but if it did, I would have to tell Lacy what I had done. God, how did I let this happen? I felt sick about it. I parked on the street and sat there for a while, thinking. How could I tell Lacy I had cheated on her after we agreed never to let that happen again? She would definitely kick me out and divorce me. What was I to do? I decided that for now, this homecoming would be like all the others. Then at some point over the weekend, I would have to come clean and tell Lacy what I had done. Lacy saw me. "Hey sailor, what are you doing here?" she teased. There was something about how Lacy said that and the look in her eyes that made the hair on my neck prickle. There was a different look I did not recognize, and I smiled, and she smiled. Whatever it was, I would learn about it later. Maybe there was a story coming from Lacy too. The look on his face changed. He realized he had made a mistake. He had told me in as many words, something had happened. Then she suddenly, Jesus Christ, Lacy knew. How could she? What? Lacy just admitted that she had cheated on me this week too. And not just with a guy but with 2 women. When had she gotten into women? A sudden wave of relief came over me. There was no divorce, shame, or hatred. We were mutual cheaters for the first time in 7 years. I looked down at Lacy. Lacy was mine. And I was hers, and we both knew it. After a brief rest, we showered separately or may never have gotten on the road. We packed the SUV and were off for a sin-filled weekend at the beach. "So, you had an interesting trip, I see." It was time to get it all out, and we were captive to each other for 3 more hours, so it was story time. James looked at me, then back at the road. "You want to go first or me?" James asked. "Okay, I'll go first, then I want the whole story on you and Teresa." My voice was a little snarky. I was pissed James had gone back to her. They were a major part of our problem 7 years ago, and James swore over his mother's grave he would never be with her again. His mom's not dead yet, so the grave thing meant nothing. He was really lucky that I off on him this week, or it could have been doomsday. James said nothing, he just watched the road. For the next hour, I told James about every evil and naughty thing I did this week. Now that my cheating fires were lit again, I didn't want it to be put out, I wanted us to be open but limited. What I wanted was dangerous and could explode at any minute, but the cheating was a guaranteed disaster waiting to happen. When I finished, James asked me 3 questions. 1. Do you still love me? That shocked me. Oh my God, James, how can you ask that? I love only you, and no one could ever fill that place in my heart but you. Yes, I love, adore, and crave you every minute of the day and night. We can solve this cheating or open thing very simply. You can never travel again. Well, I will let you out so you can go golfing and fishing with your buddies, but otherwise, we are together. I smiled, saying that in a little coquette voice. 2. Explain this love you have professed for Valerie, it sounds very threatening to us. James, this is a hard one to explain. The yard guy, Tim, was supposed to come for the first time on Wednesday. I woke to his text telling me he was not coming but would be there tomorrow. James, now that I had broken my promise, I knew we were done, so I figured that what I did now didn't matter. So I wanted him. Please continue. There is a rest stop in about 50 miles, James teased. I stopped talking and took a breath. I was surprised his voice had no anger, and he still had his story to tell me. Keep going, what happened next, James? That is how things went for the rest of the night. James, we finally fell asleep spooning. I awoke this morning, and Tim was gone, having slipped away at night. I was glad Tim was gone because you were coming home to me this morning, and I was so happy that I stopped and silently rested back against the seat, not knowing what James was feeling. Final part coming next, there was a rest stop that would be coming up in a mile. After hearing Lacy's story, I needed to breathe fresh air, pee, and prepare to tell Lacy about Teresa. That I sat silent, not speaking since Lacy finished her story. I saw the rest stop and pulled off. It was not busy, so I parked in the back, away from most of the cars. Once we parked, I sat there for a few minutes, thinking about what I had heard. That I had listened to Lacy describe her week. I was quite shocked at her activity and that she would cheat on me with 3 people, and 2 were women, all in the same week. What shocked me most was the women. Lacy had never been into women before. Sure, she would comment on seeing a beautiful woman from time to time but never acted on anything, so here we are again, in a similar situation 7 years later. You said you have to pee, do you? If you need to go, do it and return here quickly. Then you must tell me about Teresa. Okay, I'll be back, get ready. We have to make it quick. James jumped out and quickly walked to the restroom. I crawled into the back seat and pulled down the window shades. My text, hurry, or I'll do it myself. The picture captioned that I looked out the front of the SUV and saw James's walking quickly back to me. The back door opened and closed, and I locked them. Anyone outside would know what we were doing, but I didn't care. I was sure James didn't care either. We breathed hard as we collapsed together, cuddling on the seat. We laughed. Do you think anyone outside is watching us rocking the boat? James asked. I looked outside before getting out and into the driver's side. I only saw a truck driver eating a sandwich at a picnic table. He smiled, showing his snaggled teeth, and gave me a thumbs up. I settled in the seat and started the engine. She would make some truckers happy as we hit the highway again. Lacy had only done this one other time. We were cruising now, and our first trucker was on our right. Lacy was giving him a show. I hope he doesn't have a wreck. Okay, James, story time. I want to hear about Teresa. Okay, Lacy, first off, I must tell you that I had no idea Teresa would be there this week. Another sales rep, Will Ames, was supposed to be there. But his wife entered early labor, so Teresa was the only available replacement. By the way, Will and Tony had a healthy baby boy 3 weeks early. So, when I arrived at the hotel and met Roslyn, the coordinator, she told me what was happening. I was not upset or worried about Teresa being there. She is an excellent salesperson who could get the job done. Lacy, as far as anything between Teresa and me, that was history, over long ago, never to be reenacted, or so I thought. At least, that is how I saw it. As you will hear, that was not how Teresa saw it. Teresa looked incredible as she always did. The 7 years had matured her in almost every way, her face, body, and brain. She was a real woman now. At 30. I must admit that when we first talked, some of those strong vibes were there, but I didn't let them control me. We all met for a team meeting and assignments. We had lunch, and I sat at the other end of the table from Teresa, being smart not to tempt fate. After lunch, we finished setting up our booth display, and by 3:30 p.m., we were finished for the day. Several office staff said they were going to the pool, so I said I would join them. We all changed, and by 4 p.m., we were all having a drink sitting along the swim-up bar. It was hot in Phoenix, so that was the perfect place to keep cool and chat. A while later, I felt a hand on my bare shoulder and turned. It was Teresa. She smiled. "Are you avoiding me?" "No, just being cautious, that's all." Teresa sat on the stool beside me. But Teresa knew what she was doing to me when she whispered, "James, I wore this just for you. Does it bring back old memories?" I cringed and fell over into the water on purpose, stopping what she was doing. I swam a few laps and crawled back up on the stool. Teresa looks but confused. "What just happened?" "Teresa, you were too close for comfort," I said, looking into her eyes. As I was leaving, Roslyn caught me. "She is in the room next to yours, so can you take it to her?" When I got to Teresa's room, I knocked. There was no answer, so I took the cover up to my room. I stripped and took a shower, dried, and put on a fluffy hotel robe, nothing else. I ordered a steak dinner and a bottle of red wine and went out on the balcony. I was watching the sunset over the desert when I heard a woman's voice, "Teresa." She was talking from her balcony next door, so the dividing wall kept me from seeing her. That was good. "Yes, you left it on purpose so I would bring it to you, didn't you?" "No, I just left it. You didn't want me there, so I left." I walked back into the room to get the cover up and noticed a connecting door between our rooms. I looked at her and handed her the cover up. "You might want to put this on." "Why? I am in my room now, and no one can see me except you, James." Teresa looked incredible. "So, baby, what did you do?" "Lacy," Teresa knew it. "I didn't do anything. I just stood there in my room, in the connecting doorway." Teresa was standing in her room in the connecting doorway too. Then Teresa smiled. As soon as he left, Teresa sat up. "Dinner?" "Yes, my dinner. You order your own." "I had mine earlier and will have another snack a little later." She smacked her lips. What a nasty lady she was. Lacy. Unfortunately, I had slipped back into Teresa's grasp. "You experienced similar feelings and desires this week, I believe." We rearranged ourselves, dressed, and pulled back out for the remaining 90 minutes. "Okay, James, tell me more." "I want to hear it all. Or maybe I should let you tell me a little at a time." "Lacy, how could I resist that invitation?" So, I nodded. The 5th day was Thursday. I was planning on leaving that day. I was shocked at what Teresa had confessed. That was her plan all week long. She wanted a baby from me. Teresa told me, "It will be Jose's baby, and we will raise him as if he is ours. You will have no obligation toward us. I love you for doing this for me. I am sorry I did not tell you my plan." Then Teresa kissed me passionately, and we moved apart. That I did not know what to say, so I said nothing. I went to my room, showered, and left for the airport without saying another word to Teresa. As the cab sped along, a text came from Teresa. Teresa's text: James, I am sorry for not telling you about the baby. I love you for being with me this week. Our time together was incredible, and I will miss you for the rest of my life. James, know that you have done a wonderful thing this week, giving us a baby that Jose will love as his own. Thank you, thank you. Teresa. I read the text again and felt sick about what I had done. I deleted the text so Lacy could never read it. Jesus, what do I do if I have? How could I ever tell Lacy I had done that? It would be the end of us. I don't know if that happened, but if it did, I would have to tell Lacy what I had done. God, how did I let this happen? I felt sicker the more I thought about it. There was no way I could tell Lacy this part of the story, so I skipped ahead and made up an ending. Lacy, it was the final day, and I was so happy it was over, and I was coming home to you and away from Teresa. This morning, I was lying in bed. It was early, and I had morning wood. The connecting door opened. The room was still pretty dark, but I knew it was Teresa. James, it is our last morning. I finished and sat silently, waiting for Lacy's reaction. I guess, I got my approval. The rest of the drive was silent. After a few miles, I looked over, and Lacy was asleep. Her hand was still in her shorts. I smiled, knowing that without touching her, I had satisfied her for now. The night was just beginning, there was little sleep that night. Good morning, master. That was the second time she had called me that, but never before. I wondered what that was all about. Good morning. I played along that I sat down and commanded, bring me coffee and make me breakfast. Yes, master. There was coffee, and my breakfast followed. This was fun. I thought I would test out just how far Lacy would let this go today. James, we need to settle this today, not wait. Okay, we will put on our suits and take a walk on the beach and talk it out. Yes, I would like that, then we can stop in those dunes down on the beach and seal the deal, so to speak, that we changed. And we went on the walk that would define the rest of our lives together. I stopped and looked up at James as we walked out the door. Baby, whatever we decide today, I want you to know that I have loved you every minute of my life since we met, and these distractions I have had over the years have never changed that. You are my man always and forever. I kissed him as a tear rolled down my cheek. James held me as we kissed and whispered, me too, I love you the same way and always will. Let's go. Epilogue. That day was hard. We had a soulful discussion about our relationship and where we saw our future life together. It was clear that we both wanted the same thing for our family. No disruption and day-to-day life would be the same. A devoted, loving life together with us and our children. It was also clear that we could no longer expect either of us to be 100% faithful. This created a major dilemma for us. How did we eliminate the emotional effect that concern would have on our lives? We would open our marriage on a limited basis. There were strict rules that could never be broken. If the rules were broken, trust would be broken, and our marriage could not survive without trust. We would have to move to the step that neither of us wanted, divorce. That we agreed we would create a legal document, a postnuptial agreement, spelling out the rules and the ramifications of breaking them. Once that was signed, our new life would begin. These were the rules, and James would have a new attorney draw up the postnuptial agreement on Tuesday. The ramifications of non-compliance were clear: divorce with little compensation in the settlement. Not something either of us wanted. The agreement was signed Wednesday at the Carol White attorney at law's office. That we had agreed, so Lacy and I went to dinner, then home to bed. 2 years have passed, and my life is wonderful. Our love is stronger than ever. I see Tim on the weeks that James is away. James did get a promotion, so he travels less. Tim and I see each other once or twice a month. That I never connected with Mallory. Valerie and I are friends now. Our time together was magical. But she lives in Denver and has found a partner. I am happy for her. I love my husband more every day. Lacy and I are solid and guilt-free. I love her unconditionally until my dying breath. Our kids know now about our arrangement. They are okay, but they don't understand why. I am not sure I know that answer either. I heard Teresa did have a baby boy. I have not seen or heard from her since that week. Lacy will never know. Life goes on, and love prevails.